Hey students, this is my metacognitive breakdown for my PowerPoint, why I presented it the way I did, why I created it the way I did, to help you get some inside info on the assignment and some of the things that I chose to help you with your decisions. So for this PowerPoint, I chose a template that they have in PowerPoint with this background with the blue, specifically because I wanted to evoke kind of like the water, the ocean. Just find something that works with your particular theme, right? Something that highlights an idea that you want to point to, and then kind of roll with that with your other visuals. So on your title slide, this is your title slide or your thesis slide. If you look at your drafting assignment description, you need to have the main components of a thesis. And those are your source. In my case, it was Finding Nemo, your context or your lens in which you're going to analyze your source. And so that for me is post-colonial theory. And then the main ideas that you're going to be focusing on in your particular essay, or at least what you think you're going to be focusing on as of right now. So here's my source, here's my lens, and then right here is those main ideas, this metaphor for Western ideology, and then specific subcategories of that. So that right away you break down for your peer that you're going to be presenting this to what you're going to focus on in your presentation. So I chose to use this point first because I think that I needed to set up the theory, the lens, first before breaking down smaller points. Because in this particular slide, I establish terminology. Something I want you to do in your papers, especially if you're using theory, is to explain what you mean by terminology, by words that you use. If you talk about a literary element or something that you see in the text, explain what you mean by that and then how it functions. So I'm introducing you guys to the vocabulary of post-colonial theory in this slide, using the Australian dentist to kind of establish my metaphor that I'm going to be running with in my analysis. And so that's why I place this first, because it builds that understanding, which is what you want to do in your essays. Your introduction has your thesis and your main ideas and kind of introduces the person who's reading to how you're going to develop your argument. And then right away after your introduction, you want to just start building the understanding. And I mentioned things in this slide that I'm going to come back to later, like the capture and the fishing. The design for this slide, this is where I want to show you the design tab right here in PowerPoint. I use that to create this. If you click on this and you go over here all the way to the right, there's design ideas. I'm going to select that now so I can show you. It generates different options of how you want to organize your slide. Now, if I select one of these other options, it moves around pictures, moves around text, and it generates it based on what's in your slide. So if you add all the text that you want into your slide and then look at the possibilities, or add pictures, you get options on how to arrange them. Now, I chose the one that I like the best, and you can always go back if it does something that you don't like, and it will make your text really small. It will kind of mess up the organization a little there, and you just have to reformat it according to how you want it to look. I chose the blue overlay, which is why it's important to have a theme that kind of matches your idea. Because then when it's making design recommendations to you, the recommendations actually kind of fit that theme, because you chose a particular template from PowerPoint or whatever, you created your own color scheme that fits the idea that you're going for. And then I have this one next because I first introduced the dentist as kind of the example of my one, big thing, the hegemonic group. And now I have the subjugated group, and I'm using Nemo as the representative of that. Not because he's the only representative, because there are a lot in the film, but I chose him specifically, not just because he's the main character, but because his story has a lot more examples in it of him being like a subaltern or like a subjugated person, right? I could have used Gil and his story. He's like tried to escape from, enslavement, essentially, this, tank for a long time. But I chose Nemo because he's the most obvious and the most easy to support. There's a lot of evidence in the film. Like this quote here from the dentist. Now, I included this quote, and you can include quotes in your PowerPoint. I recommend you keep them short, kind of like this one, not too much text on your PowerPoint slides, just so that they're easy to read. And then I actually used to show, when I presented this to you in class, I showed you the clip of the film towards the end, like right before the final slide. And the reason I changed the position of it was because I thought that it served its purpose better here, because then it introduces the idea of fish flushing, which is the focus of the actual clip from the film. And it has a bunch of stuff that I address later in the PowerPoint, but I wanted to address this, I wanted to show the film before addressing this kind of central idea from the film. Now, this particular slide has a lot of text on it. I wasn't a big fan of this, but I also felt that everything that was on here was really important to my arguments. So you can decide, to have maybe this much text, maybe less, whatever works for your particular argument you're making in the slide. This is obviously my first source here that I'm integrating. And notice I have the full name of the source because I thought that it was helpful, but I don't have a lot of specific information from it. I just give very short version of a description of what the article talks about, and then I break down how it serves my argument. When you're using and integrating sources, you want to make sure that you capture what they're really about, but then use the parts of them that work with your argument and engage with them, especially for this draft PowerPoints where you don't have a lot of time or space to explain a lot of things. Just make sure you're using only the most essential information. So then I make these definitions here. I'm continuing this kind of contrast that I established in the first two body slides, the one about the dentist and the one about Nemo. Kind of a contrast between humans and fish, between the human world and the ocean. So I'm continuing this metaphor of these different ideologies and different ways of life, and then the conflict between them. And I want to show that all the way through because that's so crucial to my thesis, right? So demonstrate that your central idea from the very beginning goes all the way through your argument. And that's what makes a good PowerPoint draft, is bringing everything together in an order that works. For this slide, this actual graphic here was created through the design tab. I didn't come up with this. What I did was to type the text that I wanted in this slide. So I just had 4 bullet points, and then I clicked on the design ideas, and this just came out. So when you know what you want to say, or you just have an idea of how many points you want, and maybe a picture, then you can go to design once you have that. And it really helps you to come up with something visually that will help make your argument. I liked the kind of progression of ideas in this particular visual, and that was why I chose this. This is my second source that I'm integrating, and I didn't talk too much about the article again, like on the previous example. If I was writing a paper about it, I would quote directly from it, but I wouldn't summarize the entire thing. I wouldn't use a bunch of quotes and information that I'm not going to directly use to make my argument. You want to make sure you just get to the most essential information. Um, I established this contrast here, and I actually, on the same slide, introduce another source here. As I was telling you guys in class, when I was going back to the essay looking at this, I thought maybe this isn't the best place to integrate this. It's a good example, but I felt like I didn't have time to really cover it in a way that did it justice, because it's a very important and big essay. But if there's something that you think works really well, that's like a bigger piece of writing, but it works really well as an outside source and relates to your critical perspective, then by all means integrate it. Just find the best place for it. So if I was to be editing this then and making this into an actual written draft, because that's what we're going to be doing after you guys present these, I would think about where I want to put this source and my other sources, in what order I want to present them to be the most effective. The reason I put this source after the previous one is because it shows a contrast. The previous one is, a child's reaction to the film. And then this one is more of an experienced reaction. Adults buying these pets presumably for their children, maybe for themselves. But it shows that kind of contrast between the people who reacted in a way that they wanted to free fish and those who wanted to subjugate more fish to make them into pets, in this metaphor. The reason that I ended on this particular slide was to show the fish pushing back on the metaphorical colonial ideology, pushing it back against the humans. And this goes back to my visuals, like specifically the film clip that I showed on my third slide, because it references a lot of these ideas, like the tools, language, and I think I brought my argument full circle. Now, of course, this isn't perfect, and neither will yours be, so don't freak out. Just make sure that you really put thought into, how you order your slides. So this is something of a conclusion. I would probably add, when I'm drafting, doing a written draft of this, I'd probably add a conclusion after this actual idea. So this would be like my last body paragraph, where I talk about fish resistance against human oppression, pushing back, because it brings the ideas full circle, but it's not necessarily the so what to my argument. But you don't need to worry about the so what right now. That's something that we want to talk about when we're drafting, unless you want to include that. Because the so what is going to be your conclusion for your final paper, which is, why am I making this argument? Why is this important? So this is kind of a so what, why is this important for the fish? What are the fish doing in response to this? But I would probably have another so what after this. Now, I told you guys to stick to 6 slides unless you absolutely need a 7th slide. Which is okay, but the idea of having such a short presentation, and these slides with these, you can't really put that much information on these. The idea of having that is so that you have to limit the information that you put. You have to limit yourself to, 5 big ideas that you're going to use for maybe 5 different body paragraphs, or maybe one of these will end up being split between multiple body paragraphs, whatever works in your essay, but you're developing your ideas in a logical way and keeping yourself to the minimum information that you need to make your argument. I posted a couple links for you to your Blackboard. This is under Essay 2. You'll find this list of literary devices. We've been talking about this on Fridays in class a little bit, and I haven't had a chance to finish that lesson where we use literary devices to analyze the poems that we've been doing. And so if you want to look at this, it's just a website that has a long list of literary devices. If you can't think of the name of something, but you see it happening in your source, or if you're trying to find a way to analyze these literary devices, this could help you define them, put a name to a thing you're seeing. And then this is an encyclopedia of literary theories. Post-colonialism is a literary theory. There are a lot of other ones. There's feminist literary theory, gender studies. There's Marxism, deconstruction. So there's some that are philosophical, and there's some that are more like social. So there's a lot of different perspectives. And as a literary scholar, what I do, what your professors do for English, is we use these literary theories, usually more than one actually at a time, to analyze what we're reading, this literature, to show a different angle, to show something important about it that maybe someone else hasn't thought of before, because they didn't use that perspective. So you can do that on your essays, use these literary theories. I would read up on it here, and then if you choose one and a source that you're going to use that with, come talk to me, talk to Dr. Niemeyer. He's very knowledgeable about this, just so we can make sure that you have the terminology from these theories and the resources to make an effective argument with good terms that's very solid. That is, I believe, all that I have to say to you guys for this video. So just let me know if you have any questions. Send me an email, please. Come present your draft to me before Friday, so that I can help you out just organizing your argument. Obviously, when I was presenting this, I wasn't reading off a script, and I'm sure you can tell with all my ums and the way that I wasn't sure what I was doing when I was ending, because I didn't have a scripted out ending for myself. And I don't expect you to have a speaking script, but I do want you, when you present, to show that you've been thinking about all these things, that you may have practiced your presentation, hopefully, and that not that you're an amazing speaker, or this is a perfect assignment, but just that you are willing to put the effort into this, and that you're not just reading off the slides, that you're showing an understanding of what you're talking about. That's what I really want. So if you want to, make note cards for yourself to keep yourself on track, that helps. If you really do want to use a speaking script, because you know that you're going to get lost, you could do that too, but I recommend that you try to ad-lib a little bit, because it helps you come up with ideas. So this is a fun experiment that we're doing. Hopefully you guys have a little fun with this week as you're creating your PowerPoints, and let me know if you need any help. Thank you so much.